Welcome to the Marketing Behind Rapid Growth, the podcast where we explore the strategies, decisions, and growth engines behind some of the world's most successful technology companies. Today we're talking about Workday. Picture a diner in Truckee, California in 2005. Two men sit across from each other, still processing a loss. One of them, Dave Duffield, had just watched his life's work, PeopleSoft, get swallowed by a hostile takeover from Oracle. The other, Anil Busri, had been right there with him through the fight. Most people, after a defeat like that, would take some time off. Maybe reflect. Maybe walk away from software entirely. Instead, over coffee and conversation, Duffield and Busri started sketching the outline of something new. Not a rebound project. A bet on where the entire industry was about to move. That bet was the cloud. And what came out of that diner conversation would eventually become a company that today runs the people and money operations of more than half of the Fortune 500. This is the story of Workday. And it's not just a story about brilliant software. It's a story about what happens when product architecture and marketing move in lockstep, each one making the other more powerful. Let's start with the problem. Workday was actually trying to solve. In the early 2000s, if you worked inside a large enterprise, your HR data lived in one system. Your finance data lived in another. Your workforce planning lived somewhere else entirely. None of these systems talked to each other cleanly. Upgrades were dreaded events, often costing millions of dollars and consuming years of consultant hours just to keep the lights on. This was the world Duffield and Busri wanted to burn down. Their idea, building enterprise HR and financial software entirely in the cloud, sounded almost reckless at the time. The conventional wisdom in the industry was that large enterprises would never trust something as sensitive as payroll or financial data to servers they didn't control themselves. But here's what Workday's founders understood that the skeptics didn't. If you wait until the market feels comfortable with an idea, you've already missed your window. The skepticism itself became a kind of shelter. While competitors dismissed the cloud as a novelty, Workday built quietly, without anyone breathing down its neck. Now let's talk about what they actually built, because the architecture is the foundation for everything that came after, including the marketing. Workday's core strategy had a name. They called it the power of one. Instead of stitching together multiple databases the way legacy systems did, Workday built its entire product on a single unified database. One security model, one business rules engine, one system running everything. Think about what that actually solved. A company's two most important assets are its people and its money. Workday put both of those assets inside the same system of record. That meant executives could see, in real time, the financial impact of decisions about their workforce. No lag, no reconciling numbers between two disconnected platforms. And because the whole thing was cloud native, every single customer ran the exact same version of the software. That might sound like a small detail, but it eliminated the single most painful part of enterprise software ownership, the upgrade cycle. Workday could push improvements to its entire customer base simultaneously, instead of forcing each company through its own multi-year migration project. This is elegant engineering, but elegant engineering on its own doesn't win enterprise deals. And that's where the story gets interesting. As Workday matured, it didn't stay confined to HR. It expanded into payroll, financial management, recruiting, and enterprise planning. Slowly, it became something bigger than a single product. It became the operational backbone for how large organizations actually function. And then came a moment that tested everything Workday had built, the rise of generative AI. A narrative started to spread across the tech industry. AI was going to devour traditional software. Legacy systems of record, the story went, would become obsolete, replaced by scrappy AI-native startups that could move faster and think smarter. For a company like Workday, built over nearly 2 decades on a system of record model, this was an existential threat to the story people told about the business. So what did Workday do? It didn't retreat. It reframed. The company made an argument worth sitting with. Reasoning alone cannot run payroll. It cannot enforce compliance. AI models, no matter how sophisticated, need pristine, structured context to perform reliably in high-stakes environments. And Workday happened to be sitting on exactly that kind of context. Trillions of transactions processed every year across roughly 75 million users, capturing precisely who approves, what, how money actually moves through an organization, and which policies govern those decisions. Workday's bet was that this data set, refined over years of real enterprise use, was the real moat, not the interface, not any single feature, the data itself. So instead of positioning itself as a system of record under threat from AI, Workday repositioned itself as a platform of agents, built for the AI era. It acquired AI-focused companies like Paradox and Sana, weaving their capabilities directly into the core platform rather than bolting them on as separate features. It also began shifting its pricing model, moving from purely seat-based subscriptions toward a consumption-based structure built around what it calls flex credits, so that revenue could scale alongside how much customers actually used its AI capabilities, not just how many employees they had. This is a pivotal lesson in itself. When the ground shifts under an industry, the companies that survive are rarely the ones that panic. They're the ones that find the version of the new narrative where their existing strengths still matter. Now let's turn to the part of this story that doesn't get told nearly enough, the marketing. Because here's the truth about enterprise software. You can build the most elegant architecture in the world, and it still won't sell itself to a risk-averse chief financial officer or chief human resources officer. Enterprise buyers are conservative by nature and for good reason. A bad software decision at that scale can define a career. Early on, Workday leaned heavily on a high-touch direct sales model, paired with alliances with major consulting firms like Deloitte and Accenture. These weren't just distribution partnerships, they were trust proxies. When a skeptical board heard that a firm like Deloitte was standing behind this new cloud model, that lent Workday a credibility it couldn't have manufactured on its own yet. But as the company scaled, its marketing ambitions grew right alongside it. Workday made a deliberate decision that B2B marketing did not have to be boring. It set out to shift enterprise perception, moving the brand from stodgy, risky ERP replacement to something that felt modern and even a little bit fun. That ambition reached its peak in 2023 with a Super Bowl commercial called Rockstar. If you saw it, you remember it. Ozzy Osbourne, Billy Idol, Joan Jett, Paul Stanley of Kiss, Gary Clark Jr. The ad gently mocked the office habit of calling co-workers rock stars, with actual rock stars insisting, only half-jokingly, that the title has to be earned. On the surface, this looks like a fun, low-stakes ad. It wasn't. It was a calculated, high-stakes move to humanize a B2B brand that most people had never heard of outside enterprise IT departments. And crucially, it was aimed at reaching the non-technical executives, the CFOs, the CHROs, the people who ultimately sign off on multi-million-dollar transformation projects, but who don't spend their days reading software trade publications. The campaign worked. It produced a measurable lift in brand awareness among senior leaders, along with a noticeable spike in search interest. Workday kept building on that momentum with a consistent brand promise, moving business forever forward. And as AI hype began to create real confusion among buyers, Workday's messaging worked to demystify the technology, focusing on practical use cases and measurable returns for HR and finance leaders, while actively pushing back against the fear that AI would simply replace workers. Alongside that broad brand messaging, Workday ran precision account-based marketing and built experiential events like Workday Rising, turning its own customer base into a community of vocal advocates. The marketing function wasn't just generating leads in a funnel, it was building a sense of inevitability and momentum around the platform itself. So what can today's growth leaders actually take from Workday's journey? First, brand messaging should simplify product architecture. Power of One works as a marketing phrase because it distilled a deeply technical advantage, a unified cloud-native data model, into something a non-technical buyer could understand and repeat. Architecture only becomes a competitive edge once the market can actually grasp it. Second, sell trust, not just features. In enterprise software, the real competitor is almost never the other vendor. It's the status quo. Workday understood from the start that it was selling confidence. First by leaning on established consulting partners, and later through high-visibility brand campaigns designed to manufacture trust at scale. Third, humanize the B2B experience. The Rockstar campaign is a reminder that enterprise buyers are still people. They respond to humor, emotion, and the same consumer-grade polish they experience in their personal lives. Workday bet correctly that its users expected that same quality of experience at work. Fourth, Your earliest hires shape your long-term trajectory. Duffield and Busry personally interviewed Workday's first 500 employees, screening specifically for a we mentality over an I mentality. That focus on culture wasn't incidental. It translated directly into customer outcomes, with engaged employees building more intuitive products and delivering stronger service, which helped Workday sustain gross revenue retention in the high 90s. In software, culture functions as a growth metric. Fifth, own the narrative during industry pivots. When AI threatened to upend the entire SaaS model, Workday didn't play defense. Its product teams moved quickly to integrate agentic AI into the core platform, while its marketing reframed AI as a tailwind instead of a threat, shifting the conversation from job displacement toward productivity and growth. Workday's rise was never a story of lucky timing. It was the product of a tightly choreographed relationship between engineering and storytelling. The company built software that dissolved the data silos plaguing legacy enterprises, and then it deployed marketing that humanized the brand, simplified its complexity, and captured the attention of the people who actually hold the budget. For any growth leader listening to this, the takeaway is simple. Building a superior product is only half the job. Lasting market leadership requires a marketing strategy that continually shapes perception, earns trust, and turns your customers into your loudest advocates. This was the marketing behind rapid growth. See you in the next episode.